So I knew that fitness was going to be my go-to because I naturally excelled at that with being an athlete. But I knew long term, I wanted to do similar things that Tony did for people, helping them get off of vices, overcoming traumas, things of that nature.
Thanks for checking out today's episode of The Experience Curve, where we explore the personal journeys of accomplished individuals, breaking down the steps they took to get where they are, which I hope just might inspire you on your own path forward. On today's show, I am joined by Derick Johnson, a United States Army veteran turned successful fitness entrepreneur and life coach. And throughout this episode, we'll explore how discipline, resilience, and consistency paved the path to success. Strategies for building a coaching practice from the ground up, including marketing and client acquisition, insights into the intersection of psychology and entrepreneurship, and the power of leveraging technology to enhance the client experience and drive business growth. Now, as someone who's overcome personal challenges and leveraged those experiences to help others thrive, Derick brings a unique blend of passion, expertise, and firsthand knowledge to the table. His journey from military upbringing and service to successful entrepreneur serves as an inspiration for anyone seeking to make a positive impact and build a business that aligns with their values. Hey, Derick, good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time to join me today.
Thanks for having me, Joe. Pleasure being here.
Pretty inspirational, the stuff you've done in your young, short life so far. I usually start with people, at the top of like where the entrepreneurial journey, but yours was a little bit of an unconventional path, obviously military background. Where would you say like you were, or you could give like a little background into your life into where you got to this entrepreneurial phase?
Yeah, perfect. So once again, I appreciate you having me. And honestly, what got me into entrepreneur side hustle was in middle school. Everything started in middle school. I was the guy that people would give their CDs to, and I would burn CDs. And like, that was my first thing. I was the LimeWire guy. I'm the guy that would mess up the parents' computer. If people know about LimeWire, I would get the DVDs, the CDs. And then after that came the MP3 players, and then came the iPods. So I grew up in that era. I'm 34. So my first side hustle was doing that. And then at 15, I became a certified personal trainer. So fitness was my outlet from a lot of wild upbringings of trauma. Drugs and alcohol run on both sides of my family. And I was the skinny kid that was beat up. I was bullied and had a bad stuttering issue, had zero confidence. And that would happen at home, at school. So I said enough is enough. And so fitness was my step one into personal development. So within about 2 years, I did a total transformation physically, mentally, and just public speaking. And people were like, do you have a brother? This is not you. You used to sit in the back of the class, just quiet and nervous and get beat up and just be shy and all that. And I said, no, this is me. And so people asked me, how did you do this? And it inspired me to help empower others. And so at 15, I became the trainer. And it was strictly focused on fitness and performance. So I would train my teachers, my friends, my parents' friends, and I was just taking on clients left and right. And it was just awesome to see because I knew that I was onto something. But I knew deep down, I wanted to heal people in a deeper way. At that time, I didn't know how to do that. But I knew that eventually when I got older and got more life experiences, I would get into life coaching because the step one into what got me into what I'm doing was my dad. He's Army, and he used to always listen to Les Brown, Tony Robbins, Zig Ziglar. So I would just hear this stuff constantly. And when your dad gives you advice you really don't pay attention to. So if a different source gives you the same piece of advice and you're like, oh man, that's golden. And so once I heard Tony Robbins, I was 11 or 12 years old. I was in my dad's truck. And I remember clear as day, Tony goes, if my mother gave me the love I wanted as a child, I wouldn't be the man I am today. And I'm 11 or 12 years old hearing this and I'm getting chills. I'm getting teary. I'm like, who is this guy? And I need to know what he does. And so how he made me feel, I wanted to make other people feel. So I knew that fitness was going to be my go-to because I naturally excelled at that with being an athlete. But I knew long term, I wanted to do similar things that Tony did for people, helping them get off of vices, overcoming traumas, things of that nature. But step one into entrepreneurship on paper was becoming a trainer and doing it through myself, opposed to training for gyms. And then from there, I just hit the ground running through high school, training everyone. And I just became like that go-to guy in my hometown of, hey, can we go to your boot camp? Or, hey, can you train my grandma? And people just trusted me because I was purely passionate about what I was doing. So it wasn't just to like show off and just be the guy with the clipboard. Really didn't care. Like I was genuinely passionate to help people because I truly do believe that what you lacked as a child or as a teenager, you tend to give. So in our home, we were disciplined, we were structured, it was educated, wake up, we don't cry here, we don't like F your feelings, just that was the structure. So dealing with that, we never once said, I love you. We barely had breakfast and dinner together. It was more so, it ran like a business in our home. And so since I didn't get that attention, support, active listening, I would give that to everybody. And so I really fell in love with seeing people feeling heard and understood. And I realized that at our core as humans, we all want to be heard and understood. Like that's our inner child or inner teenager. And so I always wanted to give that feeling to somebody, even if we work together or not, because I knew what it felt like to have nobody listen to me. And so fitness was step one into my personal development. And then I turned that into a business and then just kept going from there, getting better at it.
So you're 15 and then you're getting clients, you're going right down through high school. When you're done high school, what happens?
So when I graduated high school, I graduated with the Army ROTC scholarship. So I had a full ride to college and I did full-time Army ROTC. And so I was the trainer and then the Army guy. People just were like, all right, he gets you in shape and then he's always up early. But I mainly got into the military, not just ROTC, but also went active duty after that was I wanted to overcome my own fears because I had fears from my childhood and teenage years, like fear of heights, public speaking, a lot of other things. And I knew that the military would mold me into the person and the man that I wanted to become outside of just being the educated guy or just the fitness guy. I knew that I had to face my fears. So after high school, I was a full-time student and then doing RTC. And then 2 years of RTC in college. After that, I went full-time. Just my conscience said, you know what? Let's just go all the way in. And so I did 5 years active and then 5 years Army National Guard. So essentially I would travel the state of Florida when there was a hurricane, flooding, etc. So I was always driving up and down the coast. But during that whole time period, I was still training people. And so I eventually took it online when I was in the Army because I knew that I had family overseas, I had friends in places, and I honestly just got tired of making PDFs and making spreadsheets. And I was like, I got to bring this online somehow. So me traveling with the military and having people that were interested in coaching, just had to get creative and learn how do I bring this online, give them the best user experience. And so it's honestly just trying to still give top quality, top tier service outside of just being in person because I had people that were interested in different parts of the world.
Yeah, yeah. That I mean, I'm sure that's the internet and things like that would help in the beginning. Maybe in high school wasn't as big of a thing, but when you're coming out, right, and you're saying, okay, I'm now back full time. Are you running this as like a company, or is it more like consultate? Like did you have an LLC? Was it like a full fledged business at this time?
Yeah, so at between 15 to 19, it was just like through local, like we would do prit quo quo. They would help me, I'd help them, and we trade. Like the photographer, I'd train them and all that. And then it turned into like under the table. And then when I turned 20, that's when everything went all on paper. LLC went from there, consultation call, sales call, payment gateways, et cetera, et cetera. And so I had to learn all that, which was the power of the internet, because most of what I learned business wise I signed up to courses, workshops, and just bought everybody's stuff and was just obsessed with just learning because of the information age. I just had a rush and I said, you know what, the information is out there. And the funny thing about it, I did so many business courses and sales courses that my buddies who have MBAs in business, they're like, dude, how do you crank out sales? I'm like, how are you so good at XYZ and Facebook ads and Google ads and algorithms? I'm like, well, what the hell are they teaching you with your MBA? And so I would ask someone, I'm like, dude, you don't even know how to run a Facebook ad. I'm like, what are you talking about? And so it was just funny, the perception of nothing against college because I also went, but for exercise science. But in terms of business, what people weren't learning, and then the people who were tech savvy, they learned much faster with social media, the power of it, building a brand, things of that nature, where they just saw the path was much faster, not rushing to success, but they just saw a smoother, more clear path rather than just going this long, outdated route, learning from an individual who probably never ran a successful business. So I just always saw it in that route because I took my my discipline from the military and sports just into business. And I just felt at my core, if I could find mentors, coaches that already did what I wanted to do, I would just go all in and just listen to them, follow the steps, and not try to reinvent the wheel if somebody already has something laid out. Like I'd much rather go and listen and invest in myself in regards to the people that have already done it.
Yeah, I mean, so talking about your upbringing, right? You were obviously open about, the relationship with your parents and how it wasn't like the most "I love you" type of family. The fact that you went and seeked out mentors, right? Like, what impact did that have on the shape of your business and how the learnings that you may feel like, okay, not father figures, but trying to figure out people that can help guide you in the path of where you wanted to go.
Yeah, great question. So a big thing was that I've always just been very direct and blunt with people, but it all came from my heart. But I would just always tell my family, like my uncles or my neighbors and all that. And I would say, hey, if I take your advice, will I end up like you? And it would catch them off guard. But I was like, no, I'm genuinely curious. I was like, you don't have a coaching business. You don't have XYZ. You're a lawyer. She's a doctor. They do this. I understand that's a different route to success. That makes you happy, but I will never be fulfilled doing that. And I was like saying this stuff as a teenager. And I was just like, I'm sorry. I'm just not listening to you. And so I just did it respectfully, but most people, they were angry. The others were like, man, you're onto something because of that umph that you have. I don't know where that came from. You're onto something because nobody's going to tell you no, you're going to figure it out. And so honestly, it was just finding individuals that were actually doing what I wanted to do or something similar, because I realized that they did not have a skewed way of thinking and they weren't thinking narrow. They were way more open-minded and just in general of wiser. And most importantly, they didn't have pride and ego in the way. So a lot of the military mentality is my way or the highway. We've always done it this way. It's like the corporate mentality that works to an extent, but in business, that's not going to work. So knowing that a lot of the father figures in my life had pride and ego in the way, I found individuals who were more open to teach me, ask questions, and let them not get offended if I ask a certain question. So it was an interesting dynamic because I was only used to like all alpha male, my way or the highway, shut up until you're spoken to. I was used to all that. So once I met individuals that were making 7, 8, 9 figures and they're like, hey, what questions do you have? It's like, huh? What questions do I have? Like, you care for me to ask you? And then I would ask them like, holy shit, they're actually teaching. And they're like, hey, I do this. We have a course. We also have one-on-one. We have group. So then I just started investing, like everything I was making from training and like side jobs, I would just invest into the business and just education, because I could see a clear path. I said, you know what, if I learn this app, if I learn this marketing, if I learn this with public speaking, all the dots just started to connect. And I said, this is the missing link. And I'm learning from individuals that actually did it. So it was the competitive standpoint of the inner athlete. And then also my teenage and inner child saying, I never want to feel that insecure and scared and unaware and uncertain again. So that's why I just went like full fledged into business and just empowering others. So essentially there was no looking back because I knew what pain, what going through hell was. And I just didn't want to feel that anymore.
Yeah, no, that that makes total sense. So like when it didn't seem like you really had issues finding clients along the way, right? But were there and you had a good deal of mentors, were there mistakes or missteps maybe you made early on in this business where you're like, in retrospect, I should have done this, or I didn't know enough about accounting or whatever, marketing, whatever it might be?
Yes, definitely in regards to once I took it fully online, because obviously nobody was handing you cash or a check anymore and it was all digital. So I will say, and nothing against PayPal, but there was a time period where I was using PayPal and it was working well. And then when you're cranking out clients and doing stuff and then they hold your funds for X amount, I was like, what do you mean? I'm using this platform. So that was my first time dealing with that. And you have X amount of grand in there and you're like early 20s and you think you have access to your funds. And I just didn't know why. But once I found people that explained it to me, I said, you know what? There has to be other ways. So definitely the payment gateways and delays, taxes, accounting. So everything on the number side, that's when I had to find all the experts because it was more so that things were hold, things were on freeze and all that. And then you call up there, they're like, wait, this is you? I'm like, yes. You're like, aren't you like 19 or 20? I was like, yes, can you answer this question? It's like, they thought that it was somebody else's company because I was just getting so many people. And so I realized that people on the tech side or the banking side, they weren't taking me serious at first. You're like, oh, your little fitness thing. Oh, your little fitness thing. I said, no, you know what? I just need to go everywhere in my uniform. So I figured out the cheat code was I just would show up everywhere in my uniform. And they're like, Mr. Johnson, how can we help you? And they forgot that I've seen them before. And I was like, why do I have to come here in this? Like, I'm not coming here for attention, but you weren't taking me serious beforehand because they were just like, oh, this is just the fitness guy. Let's just blow him off. Yeah, go over here. But when I showed them a uniform, it totally changed and they started answering my questions. And at first it was annoying, but then I said, you know what? It is what it is. Let me just take advantage of this and get the end result that I need. I'm respectful, but definitely everything in regards to numbers, that's where I had the hiccups, made some mistakes and all that, where I just didn't know what I didn't know because I was so focused on going all in that once I saw the papers, taxes, all the other stuff, I was like, oh, all right, this is going to be harder than I thought. I thought I could do everything by myself.
Yeah. Yeah. You get to that level where you're like, all right, now I need some help. Right. And when it comes to marketing, like in the beginning, was it a lot of word of mouth and sort of how did you grow like the business in general? Was marketing part of it? I'm assuming social media came in as the internet became bigger and social media apps started to pick up.
Yes, definitely. So I've been using social media since middle school. My first social media app was actually Zanga. Some people have never even heard of it, Xanga. And the next one was MySpace. So I was the guy in my high school and college that would figure out how to add like the custom song. Like I had like Eminem and Linkin Park playing on my page. Or like, how'd you do that? And I was just a guy that would figure all this stuff out quick and I would teach people how to do it. And then from there, I just knew the power of positioning yourself, having a quality looking social media page, informative tutorial videos, good lighting, good audio. And I just always wanted to present everything in the best way, even when I didn't have the equipment. Like I would literally just have my buddy hold up his phone, shine the light on me, and I'd make sure we put up some pillows because I didn't have like a studio or anything. And I just Jimmy rigged everything in the beginning. And I was like, I'm going to bring the energy. So I don't care what the quality is. But it was more so just learning, but also just bringing the energy. And I said, you know what? If somebody resonates with me, they do, and they'll see, man, this guy's probably has a shitty phone or whatever back then, but he's bringing the energy and he knows what he's talking about. So I think that overrode like the low quality back then, just because I was just consistent. I just was just overshadowing that inner child who was scared. And I said, no, just keep posting, just keep getting out there. If this video is not great, I'm going to get better. I'm going to get better. And that was just my mentality, was not going backwards and just doing more than others, not comparing myself to anybody, but more so in a competitive standpoint. I said, somebody's going to see. So if they search me, I'll pop up for the local community. And I just knew the power of just consistency. So that's what it was in the beginning, was just consistency until I did have the funding for better equipment and all that. And so it was always in the beginning teaching people with tutorial videos. So an example, did you pull a hamstring and you don't know how to recover? Through college, I would make videos on these things, how to foam roll, taking fish oil, ice bath, like all these informative videos. And I just knew that, hey, if somebody searches these words, my video could pop up. So my goal was never to go viral. It was more so if somebody came across that, they said, oh, I learned a lot in your couple of videos. What else do you do? And then once we had a conversation, it was an easy flow rather than me just messaging random cold DMing people or cold calling people. Hey, Joe, I came across your page and, I just stumbled across your page, and I never wanted to be that guy. So I first provided value. So that was my first step into social media, providing value regarding fitness tips, mindset tips, overcoming stress management, things of that nature. Internally, that was actually how I was healing myself. I didn't realize it till years later that all these deep topics and training topics that I was getting out there, that was me expressing myself and actually working on myself while getting it out there. Because somebody would say, hey, thanks for that video on depression or handling alcoholic parents. And so I was never the kid to complain. So I would just make videos about this stuff. And my family's like, why are you posting all this personal stuff? They didn't know. I was like, I don't want to complain to my buddies and be like, hey, let me tell you what happened when I was a kid. So I would just make content about this stuff. And I started catching traction, and people said, man, I went through the same thing with my uncle or my stepdad. And then just really started being transparent. And I no longer had fears of talking about anything. And I said, wow, this feels good. This feels freeing, getting it all off my chest. And so internally, I realized that, wow, everything regarding therapy I was doing just openly to the internet. And I don't know where it came from, but something just told me, my conscience just said, get it out, don't hold it in. And so I just kept doing that. So I've always had very strong faith, and my intuition was just always guiding me to speak about certain topics. I literally make videos about suicide, all these deep topics that people were uncomfortable to discuss. And I would just make them in regards to being able to help one person. I would literally close my eyes and envision I was talking to one woman or one man. And if that right person saw it, they're like, wow, I felt like you were speaking to me. And that was that. Even if we'd never worked together, never met, I just felt empowered. And I said, I'm onto something. I have to keep showing up for others. So I just kept going, honestly.
Where were you posting this content? Because back then, YouTube, everything was, relevant, but not now to where it's like a game of like keywords and, trying to play this algorithm game.
It was on Facebook at that time. This is right when Facebook started with the business pages. And at this time period, any business Facebook page could catch traction. That's when there was no algorithm. Because nowadays, you could have 100,000 on a business page. And if you're not running ads, they're like, nope, this is a pay to play platform now. But back then, everybody that had a business page, like I had a buddy who was a chef, I had a buddy who was a skateboarder. All of us were like catching traction. And we're like, man, we're onto something. And so this is before algorithm. We didn't know what was happening. I was like, just keep posting. I was like, I don't know how I'm being seen in this country and over here. And so we just kept doing tests, split testing, split testing, split testing. So we were just like, honestly, psychotic about getting stuff out there. We're just like, we got to do more. We got to do more. And so all of us would just get together and make videos on what we were experts in and just crank it out. So Facebook was our thing back then. And we just started to catch traction. And it was just interesting to see because that was before SEO was popular with Google and YouTube and everything. And it was just very interesting. So honestly, we would envision that we were artists. I've never made music, but we would envision that we were artists trying to get our song out there and our music and build a fan base. So we went into it with that mentality of seeing an artist that was always in the studio. And I would see there's a direct parallel, the competitiveness. And we would say, let's make content. Let's treat this like we're about to drop an album or about to do this. We're the new hot artist or whatever. So we would approach it with that mentality. It was very interesting because now when I see independent artists like Russ or even musicians and bands that are also independent, when they speak about their journey, I was like, we used to do that. I know exactly what he means. So it was exciting just getting it out there when nobody was really doing it and just no fear. Post it. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. And you've personally grew up in like a disciplined household, right? And then obviously your military experience, discipline, right? But a lot of entrepreneurs seem to have this like chasing the shiny objects where it's like, yeah, you would try things, but it doesn't seem like you didn't half-ass them. You just kind of went and you treated them like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be consistent, right? Over and over. How much do you think of your upbringing and or the military played into that role in your entrepreneur life?
It definitely played a major role because that was just instilled. So I don't have kids, but as most parents know, they know that kids and teens, they do as they see, not as they're told. So I would, even though we didn't have a good relationship, my parents were up at 4 and 5 a.m. every morning working out, like 6 days a week. My mom would be doing Billy Blank's Tybo DVDs or Body by Jake or working out in the pool. She would have pool weights and all this. My dad would run or he would go on the base, hit the gym. He would win massive trophies for racquetball, and they were just always active. So that's all I saw. We really didn't have like real personal conversations. It was more get your ass up and we got stuff to do, and that was it. But I always saw it. So when I would go to sleepovers when I was a kid and teen at my buddy's house, it was weird because I was like, your dad's still sleeping? It's 9 a.m. He's like, yeah, he was drinking all night. I was like, my parents drink too, but they're still up. So it was an interesting parallel. So the older I got, I was like, wow, this was always our normal. Our default setting was wake up early and get active and serve other people. And so their drinking, the rage, all that violence and all that, it would only happen between the hours of 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. So only at home. It was never in public and it never affected their career. So me being that teen and that kid, I kept it to myself. I never wanted to complain because at the time I had friends that were going through worse, in and out of foster care. And so from the outside, German mother from the city, African-American father from the country boy, work ethic, both grew up poor, became successful, beautiful house in Florida, screened in pool, 4 bedrooms, 4 baths. And I was like, I can't complain. We have the things, we just don't have the love, affection, listening and all that. So I said, I need to learn how to be able to do that for people because that's a huge reason I didn't complain because we actually like had everything. I never once missed a meal, never once slept without the AC, like all those things. So I never complained to anybody. Like one of my best friends never believed what was happening at home until I laid the phone down one time and he heard the screaming and like the glass breaking and the rage. And just, he was like, dude, that was like 3 hours. And I was like, yeah, welcome. He's like, no wonder you're so intense about everything. I was like, because I never want to feel that way again. And so that inner anger from that teenager and just the consistency and all that definitely played into it. So seeing that was definitely a blessing. And going back to the Tony Robbins quote, if my mother gave me the love I wanted as a child, I wouldn't be the man I am today. And so that quote sticks out to me more than any quote, because I wouldn't know who I would be if I was coddled and just like, oh, my boy, and blah, blah. Because nowadays society, it's rare to find like men that are serve their family and serve others. It's just this coddle culture and everything. So I am grateful that those things happen. So to be able to see those attributes of family, and especially men, that no matter what they went through, they just protect, they serve, they provide for the family and loved ones, they support and just lead by example. And so I grew up seeing that intensity. I would always see the positive over the dark, and the dark was what drove me. And so, like a direct parallel could be, some would call that the dark side or the alter ego. Kobe Bryant had Black Mamba, Eminem has Slim Shady. Like everybody has, pro athletes have it. So I resonated with those analogies so much because I used to do that as a kid. I would pretend that I was somebody else during like the crazy times when I felt all the emotions. And the older I got, I was like, huh, I was doing shadow work. I was doing psychology. I was doing breath work before I even knew what that stuff was, just to get through it. So it's interesting in hindsight, what you naturally are pushed to do. And the older you get, you're like, I was doing a lot of healing and I was working on my faith, and I didn't know what was telling me to do it. But the older I got, I realized that I was always guided by God to do these things, even though at the time I was just confused, unaware, but something just kept telling me, do this, do that, post this, go outside, breathe, like all these different things. I was just guided. And so it was definitely a blessing, because it was the calmness was my high. The calmness after an excruciating extreme workout, I would just have blank mind and I'd have neutrality. And that's where everything would just flow to me. Once I was in college and everything, and I was studying psychology, and I realized that a lot of those things I was doing unknowingly, and I was almost having the identical feelings of psychedelics, of ayahuasca, of inner trauma healing. And I've never touched those things, but a lot of the extreme workouts that I did, I pushed myself to the point that I would almost pass out. And afterwards, I would just have this stillness. And I was chasing the stillness because there's rarely stillness in our life. And that stillness is where like just the best ideas would come from. And I would just start writing, or I would start recording, because I was not thinking about myself. I said, well, I have no thoughts. Something's telling me to speak about said topic. I would hit record, or I would message somebody. And then every single time something good would happen for somebody else, for me, for a team, and somehow it would come back. And so I didn't do it to expect anything, but it was just being guided in that calmness. So the rage, I flipped it into fuel, pushed it, and then try to flip that energy to help empower others.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you when you mentioned the word, psychology, and when you visit your website, you have a lot of testimonials, or people on there overcoming, whether it's obesity, alcoholism, suicidal thoughts, right? Sort of achieve, overcome these challenges, right, through coaching. How much does psychology factor into running your business when it comes to like understanding, supporting these clients, but because they all have a different journey they're going through?
Yeah, I would definitely say it's 70% mental, 70% mental. So I always focus on the mind body connection, the mind body connection. I tell people, I say, anybody can follow a structured workout plan and a meal plan. The reason they fail at it is because of mindset, limited beliefs, lack of discipline, lack of consistency, negative self talk, intrusive talk, vices. The list goes on and on. And so that's why 70% of what we focus on is figuring out what their pattern is. And a pattern could be their auto response. What does he do when he's actually stressed? Does he pick up the bottle? Does he hold that anger in and then he snaps on family or friends? Or he's not present with his kids? He's not present on his date? What is everyone's pattern? And so we really pinpoint those things without judgment. So definitely 70% mental. And it's more so, the whole idea is to give them clarity. We have a conversation. We're always writing. I'm very old school. Grab a notebook, grab a pen, and we just start going deep. And the first thing that I do with anybody, we create an eliminate sheet. So we ask ourselves, What is something that you could eliminate or replace with something better that would help me make more progress? So first we start with what they eat. Maybe he eats too much sugar. Maybe she drinks too much of this. And say, okay, let's write that down. Less sugar, less that. All right. What about with your phone? What do you look at most frequently? Man, I'm always arguing with my buddy on Facebook about sports, Kobe versus LeBron, and politics and blah, blah, whatever somebody's looking at. I say, okay, write that down. I need to eliminate unnecessary scrolling, mindless scrolling. Okay, what else? And then we start peeling back the layers. So we start with food. We start with our devices. What group chats they're part of? Does that group chat pour into you? And then we start going. And I say, okay, at this point, I see some calmness. What really is it? And then slowly those things start to come up. And it's like, man, 12 years old, this and this happened. And I don't want to feel that way anymore. Or I was the chubby kid, and all my life when I do public speaking, I feel like the fat kid in front of everyone. And like I start fumbling. And then they really start to open up. And then we start writing these things down. And once we start doing that, they get clarity. And then I just start flowing with them and say, okay, have you noticed that this is one pattern and your response? And then we start going deeper into psychology. And then we build a program for the mental. But by the time they get back into the gym, they feel much better. And they're like, dude, my cortisol, my stress hormone is so low now because I used to live in fight and flight. And that's one of the biggest things people say. They live in fight and flight, especially in the United States. Cortisol levels are spiked. Stress hormone is high. Fight or flight. There's no in between. It's rare to be calm. All over the place, just toxic, go, go, go. It's like they never have time. They feel like they want to scream. They're like, I need to take the edge off every Friday. And just this intense energy, just nonstop. I need to take this. Now I need Adderall. I haven't slept in 2 days. So we talk about all these things. And I'm like, it sounds overwhelming just speaking about. And I say, we're going to go back to the basics. We're going to write this down. We're going to go outside for a bit. And then we start doing different modalities. But most importantly is to let them slowly open up so they get clarity. Like, I'm not telling them what the issue is. Like, I'm no mind reader or medium, but we just peel back the layers. But the thing that I focus on and what I'm an expert in is helping people identify their patterns and then showing them how they can break those. So that way that thing does not spill into every area of their life. Because it could be inner rage because his dad beat him and he has an inner rage or bad relationship with mother. And then now this boy holds this rage towards women most of his life, or the same thing in reverse. The female does not have good relationships with males because of lack of father figure. All these things that are very common, but people really don't speak about. And they just carry this stuff into their marriage, into the relationship. And so we look at all this to say, let's put a stop to this before you ruin your next relationship or your marriage, or the kids don't even want to be around you because of X, Y, Z. So we look at the big picture and then they see the clarity and you're like, man, I don't want to end up like that. So that's why we want to work on that at our core. So 70%, 100%, 70% of what we work on is mental.
Does that also play into like just basic motivation? Maybe some of that's not dealing with a major problem, right? Obesity, alcoholism, but just like, you know what? I'd rather sit on the couch and eat chips or something, right? Like back to the psychology, how does that work too? Is it the same kind of mindset?
Yes. So we break down their schedule. So my intent is not to say, hey, show me your schedule, show me your fridge, throw away your second shelf, show me your pantry. You're going to wake up at 6 tomorrow. Like that. That's not my intent. If somebody's an athlete, they might need that, but 90% of people, they don't need that major change in regards to their schedule. So we just look at it and say, all right, what normally happens when you're about to go work out? Man, I sit on the couch and I put the shoes on and I say, let me just go get some food instead. And then they drive to a restaurant instead of the gym. Or that initial decision, we pinpoint like, what is your initial auto response decision? Is it to lay back down? Is it to hit snooze 5 times? And next thing you know, you're late, anxiety's up, you're annoyed, everybody needs you. You're just like, shit, can I get 10 minutes of myself? And then it just keeps going. Like what is his or her pattern? And so we always pinpoint that. And then we almost turn it into a challenge or a game to say, let's see how many days you don't hit snooze. So we essentially just stack wins. She didn't hit snooze for 5 days in a row. It's her first time in 6 years. For her, that's huge. Anybody else, like, she just got up on the first alarm. But for her, if this person has been this way for years, it's huge for them. So like, man, this is amazing. Okay, let's add that morning workout. All right. So you didn't hit snooze. Now you went to the gym. Okay. Now you didn't eat sugar. You didn't spend $10 at Starbucks again, eating artificial crap. Now you did something else. They're like, hey, I'm catching a rhythm. Okay. Now she's speaking up at her Monday meetings instead of sitting back, stressed, sugar spike, sugar drop. Now she's trying to fall asleep and So we really pinpoint the small things, but we're stacking wins. And so we make them aware of what their auto cycle is. Because usually people, they don't notice what their default setting is, because when you're in it, you're in it. Same thing with your best friend who's in a bad relationship. And you're like, how do you not see this, buddy? Like, what is going on? And once he gets out of it, he's like, man, Joe, how did you allow this? Why did you allow this? Why didn't you slap me in the face? And you're like, hey, I try to tell you, man, she's crazy. And that's the same cycle with most patterns. But it just takes somebody in their circle without judgment, just showing them. It's like, hey, have you noticed this? And once they have clarity, they can see, that's why I'm lazy. That's why I do this. My auto response is this. I'm stressed because of that. So now I just want to sit and eat. So every single time that they get clarity, their confidence goes up, and then they just slowly start going harder on their goals. So again, it's not just like, hey, tomorrow we're going to go balls to the wall, beast mode. That doesn't work for most people. But if they start stacking those small wins, 5 days turns into 10 days, turns into 2 months. Next thing you know, they're down 20 pounds and they're almost surprised by it, because they're like, it doesn't feel like I'm pushing that hard, but they made lifestyle changes. And then at that point, they can really perform at a high level and say, wow, I'm 20 pounds down. I made some minimal adjustments. Now we can really train. Because if we really go in the first 2 weeks, they're going to be so sore that they don't have a pattern yet. They don't have the same wake up time. So I just take things slow. My whole focus is longevity. I'm not the keto guy. I'm not here to tell you to eat liver, to go vegan, to go vegetarian. My question is just, whatever you're doing right now, does it give you progress? And is this something you could do for literally the rest of your life? And if somebody can say yes or no, then they'll know that thing. Because usually it's a fad diet, not sustainable. Usually it's like, hey, I want to cut for my wedding. Great. But is that sustainable? Why do you have to keep cutting? Why are you doing this cycle? What is that reason? And so that's a huge thing that I focus on, is we're focused on longevity, because once they're confident in their mind, their body, their responses to negativity, society, whatever their stress is, then they feel like they have control. So my whole intent with somebody is to give them that confidence in themselves, better response to situations, and they just feel calmer. So they're that person that's just like, has this look in their eye. And they say, I don't know what he or she does, but I want them on my team. They just seem like they're on a freaking mission. So that's my goal, to turn everybody into that person, because they're just like, damn, I'm so consistent. My wife sees it. My buddies see it. My coworkers like, yeah, something's different about you, Joe. Michelle, I don't know what you're doing, but something's different about you. You just got this look in your eye. And so that's one of my favorite things to hear, because it's just a positive ripple effect.
And would you say, like, what you, because you do work with people in person, you work with people remotely. Is there a difference? Is there a drop off? Is it not that different because you've been doing it so long? To be in someone's face with the going through these, steps that they're taking.
Yeah. So honestly, online, I've had the best results. So 99% of my clients are online. So we do two things. We have the coaching app, which is where they have their calendar with their specific workouts and nutrition. And it's very, in the Army, we say it's dummy proof, meaning it's so straightforward that you just follow 1, 2, 3. So we just break things down, simplicity, until they're at the next level. So fitness app is one. The other thing we do Zoom calls, and that's where the mindset coaching is. And that's where they have their pen and paper, and we track every call. We have some checklists and accountability in between. But the best part is that the difference is, if you train at LA Fitness and you see your trainer 4 or 5 days a week, after the workout, it's rare that you guys text. They don't really do nutrition. They're not going to help you overcome trauma. They're not going to ask you about your cycle and patterns of responding to not hitting sales quota and being in trouble at work, like all these other things outside of it. So you just show up and work out, which is great. You're having a great workout, you're sweating, but they're missing everything else on the inner, and then everything with food. So that's the difference. And so the reason that is so effective now, we keep in communication between our calls and between their workouts. And then I really get to know them. And then we make that lifestyle change to see, okay, he's married, has 2 kids, has a dog, his wife has a cat. He hates the cat. So now I know more about him, and we bring these things up. We have some dialogue, and then I really start to see how he is as a person. And I know what he needs opposed to this guy. So it's never a one size fits all. It's all based on, where is he starting? Where is he trying to go? And what does he need? And then I just give them the plan of what's best for them and whatever their starting point is.
So you mentioned an app, though. Now, is that something that you help develop, or is that something you outsource? From a business standpoint, is that like an expense that when you're incurring, okay, do I want to take this and go that step of taking that, which some or a few businesses, many businesses do. Is that something that you kind of helped design? And if so, like, how has the response been? Is that like a game changer for your business?
Yes, 1000% is a game changer. So the one that I use is called Trainerize, the word trainer with IZE.com. So it's actually a Canadian company, and I've used them for 7 years. And so essentially, it is a platform designed for trainers and coaches, fitness and nutrition specifically. And it's like white labeled where you can upload all of your things. So everything is already straightforward, and they've made many updates, and I've always loved it. And I've never really had a major issue with them. I've tried others and I don't really like the platform. But the good thing about it is essentially the client has a calendar. Tomorrow he's training legs and core. If he clicks on the day, he'll see 4 to 7 exercises. He watches the tutorial video. It's me in the video. It's not just random Joe Blow. It's me in the video. It's very structured for them. They watch it. They get clarity on how to do the exercise, and then they follow the sets and reps. So if he's a business owner, a husband, does other things, his last thought is, what am I going to do at LA Fitness or Gold's Gym today? He opens it up. This is specifically what I'm doing. I'm doing these sets, these reps, and this weight, this amount of time on the rowing machine. Perfect. Then we have our call that week, whether that's once or twice, depending on their goal. And then we really catch up. Hey, how's work? How's this? Perfect. Oh, that's happened personally. Okay, let's walk through that. So it's way deeper than just the fitness. The fitness is like the bonus. They're like, oh, I'm down 3 pounds or I'm down 2 inches. Amazing. But I did not create the app. I white label it. So I have my logo on there, but everything that is uploaded into it, I custom make the videos, the content, the PDFs and all that. But it's more so a housing. So if people are familiar with Kajabi or with teachable.com, it's pretty similar to those. You plug everything in and it's very user friendly.
Oh, that's cool. So, well, speaking about right, like trends and sometimes like you mentioned, a couple of diets and people fads and here and there. When it comes to people who are saying, all right, I want to try this or I want to try that, latest trends, research, techniques, whatever it might be. Are you into that stuff, or do you think, okay, the more traditional stuff, or does it really just depend on the person and their goals?
It honestly depends on the person or goals. So I will say that 80% of the training is classic in regards to what machines, free weights, body weight movements, things like that. But there are some clients, let's just say that you played basketball in college and you tore your meniscus, had ACL surgery, things of that nature, you rolled your ankle, and nowadays it still kind of bothers you. Then I would make suggestions when it comes to supplementation or it comes to acupuncture or a float tank. Now, float spas are becoming very popular in the United States, and those things are amazing for people that had stress, injuries, etc. It has many benefits. So at that point, I recommend that thing for them because not everybody needs that. So there's guys like Gary Brecka, Dr. Huberman, Joe Rogan, and they're pushing a lot of stuff out there, which is awesome. More people are taking care of their wellness, trying to live longer, healthier, more vitality. That's awesome. But the sad part is that there's so many men and women that are now confused. They're like, am I supposed to take an ice bath every day? Am I soft if I don't take a cold shower? Am I supposed to do 75 hard and hit weights? Or am I supposed to do a bicep curl like Arnold? And this guy says, lettuce is bad for you. And they're overwhelmed, information overload. And they're just like, I'm just going to do what I know. Because they get overwhelmed of this information overload. And they're just like, all right, their buddy is all CrossFit. Anything else is not good because CrossFit is his religion. This lady's like yoga. Anything else, you don't need weights. So some people are way too extreme about those things. CrossFit is good. Yoga is good. But not making these things our identity. That's one thing that people miss sometimes where you could do yoga once a week, twice a month, whatever you want to do. But like, don't make that thing your whole identity. And then they miss out on a lot of other stuff because then they're like just gung ho in one way. And so that is the sad part of just the culture of the industry and the social media in general, because sometimes the people that are all in, they might be educating people, but they don't realize that. But the people sometimes that maybe are unaware, they don't realize they just want you in their ecosystem to sell you some stuff. And then you think just like they think. So like, that's another rabbit hole, but that's what happens to a lot of people. They're like, dude, I've tried 5 different things, menshealth.com. I went here, went there. But their issue is they're hopping from thing to thing with no longevity. And so I just come in there and say, okay, I appreciate you letting me know you tried that. Here's what you actually need. And show them basic things. You just need consistency, and you need to do these workouts. Once we get like midway into the program, then they all start to have new goals. Hey, I love to run a local 5K, or I want to do a marathon with my wife, or I want to do a Ninja Warrior course. Can you help me with mobility and flexibility? And after a while, they start creating new goals, and then we update their thing. But the whole time, they're making consistent progress rather than trying to get abs in 6 weeks and do friggin' Ozempic and all these other things that are popular now, weight loss pills. And so, yeah, you don't need the trending things. So I stick to the basics. And then when it comes to things that can help recovery, some people do need that. So an example again would be getting in a sauna a couple of days a week, dry needling, acupuncture, infrared sauna. There are some options, but not everybody needs that. So I'm just honest with people. It's like, you can do that, but you really don't need it. What you need is the consistency. That's what you're missing, because you could do all 15 things of these. You can buy 20 products, but you've been looking the same for 2 years. So discipline's what you need. And they're like, I appreciate the honesty. So I'm like, I'm not pitching you products. I'm just showing you have a cabinet full of supplements, and like, you still can't do what you want to do. And they're like, man. And I was like, I'm just saying, we don't have to work together, but you bought all this crap and it's just not getting anywhere. And they're like, man, I appreciate the honesty. And that's all I do. And if we're not a good fit, I'm like, hey, I wish you the best. Here's a video that might help you. And what usually happens is months or years later, they try other things and they're like, hey, man, you're the only one that was honest to me. You weren't pitching anything. You're just like, let's do this. And then we work together. And it's always like a longevity relationship. But I just approach it in that way because it's just ethics, as you know. Just always want to be that person that doesn't have a bad review, things of that nature. I'd rather have good communication. And it's just the difference when somebody's passionate about what they do to truly impact somebody with their product or service. So that's why I just give people my all, and then that's that. So
I mean, gosh, you've been 15 years old. I was going to say, like, where do you see the future of, or where would you like to see your company go in the future?
I appreciate a great question. What I see is doing in-person masterminds, but it's a 3-day thing. And most importantly, it's not going to be pitch fest. Everybody's paid thousands for a ticket. You get there to learn something, and you can't learn it till you join the gold club and the platinum level and the other package. So that's not the approach. The approach is it's a 3-day thing, Friday to Sunday. Friday, we fly into a city that has mountains. Friday, everybody meets at a hotel. We go hiking. At the top of a mountain, we do some breath work, trauma release, all natural modalities. People are releasing things. Even the people that maybe have not been through crazy stuff, they watch and they just see. And by the time that we come back down, the camaraderie of the men and women is so close because you learn so much about each other. And in the Army, we say, embrace the suck. We embraced the suck getting to the top of this mountain. We helped him. We picked her up, did whatever we needed to. That camaraderie, which is missed. And then Saturday, we do breakthrough sessions. So we're in a banquet room. Everybody's dressed nice. And we have tables set up that helps everybody. She needs help with business for marketing. He needs help with flexibility. So I have a team of experts in different industries. So everybody's there. But the whole intent is to help give people the tools that they need. And then Sunday, we break bread, we have fun, everybody connects and collaborates and make content. But the most important thing, everybody drives or flies home with tools they can use and a game plan, whether it's mental, whether it's personal, whether it's public speaking, and everybody has a clear vision. They're excited and they're just focused to get home. They get home, their family's like, man, what did y'all do there? Like, you're just in this zone. And that's the intent of it. So I see us doing that. And we're planning our first one for this fall, because right now everything is a one-on-one and group coaching, but it's all online. So I have missed the in-person camaraderie, but that's the big goal, is to do those things nationwide.
That'd be awesome. And for people listening that want to connect with you, where's the best place to find you?
They can find me on social media at fitwithderick2 on Instagram, or they can go to fitwithderick.com. That's Derick, the only right way to spell Derick. But my whole intent is just to plant seeds. So if somebody struggles hitting snooze, if somebody's struggling allowing a toxic family member to stay in their head, I'm going to make videos on these topics. And if it hits, it hits. And I just want to plant a seed to make them think. And they're like, he was talking to me. And then they start really thinking about it. And that's my whole thing. Whether we work together or not, I made them stop. I was a pattern interrupter. I called them up. I didn't call them out. But that's the intent. It's just to plant seeds. And maybe one day they'll come my way. If not, at least I made them think. So that's the whole intent.
Yeah, man. Well, this has been great getting to hear your story. Thanks for your service. Thanks for sharing this story with us. Fitwithderick.com. Obviously, you work with people globally. So anyone needs to talk with Derick or reach out to him, follow his story. Been great getting to know you and talk with you.
I appreciate it, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode of Experience Curve. Please take the time to share this podcast with a friend or colleague to help get the word out about my show.